Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Late Breakers podcast. It's a new year, same guys, talking the same sport. Uh, Nothing too crazy today. We're going to talk about a little bit of 2021 and then how excited we are for 2022 and address a quick preview for the Bahrain Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Fish, how have you been? How you doing?
I've been great. I'm ready to ride into 2022. Lots of unknowns and lots of excitement on and off the track. So I'm excited to get into it.
Excellent. Keep it brief, keep it fresh, keep it light, and let's ride. All right. Well, before we can move forward, let's move backwards. Let's talk 2021. 2021, I mean, I've only been a fan of the sport for like 2 years, so I don't have a lot of base here, but I think it's the best season we've ever had in terms of the turbo hybrid area. Maybe not the Rosberg Hamilton year, but crazy fight to the finish. I don't want to talk more about it because it hurts me. But as a Max fan, go ahead, say whatever you want.
I mean, I don't like that the whole situation is marred by the fact that it was clearly a somewhat bullshit finish, because Max obviously did just have a ridiculously good year, and maybe when it came down to it, Hamilton should have won on the last lap. But I think if the intention of the rules is to define the best driver over the course of the season, I think they succeeded in that. And so Michael Massey had every right to do what he needed to do in order to identify that.
Okay. So I guess as a wider context before we dove right in, Max Verstappen is last year's or the 2021 drivers champion. He will be the reigning drivers champion for this season. Going into Abu Dhabi, Lewis and Max are level on points, and it comes down to one race. I'm going to say the nice things about Max first, and then I'm going to get Matt. I looked at Max's race stats last year, and I think almost every single race he finished like first or second. He
finished
was like truly on it nonstop, like pole after pole. He was great. No doubt about it.
In a debatably slower car.
I would say it's faster car, but anyways. He had a great year, super deserving champion. All of that is fair. That being said, unfortunately, it did come down to one race. You know, it was like one of those things where oh, there was this, there was that, there was this, there was that. End of the day, they were tied going into the last race. You can say whatever you want of the stuff previously. I think all of that was Max's fault, obviously. But actually, I do think he was more the offender than Hamilton. But it came down to one race, and that race basically didn't count. Like, it was so – there's no way to explain it. Like, it was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, what was awesome was that it came back to that storybook finish where they were tied on points, and that was the absolutely best setup that anyone could have hoped for. Like when that happened in the second last race, and it happened in a pretty clean way. There was a bit of sketchiness, but it was pretty clean, and they were tied going in. That's you couldn't ask for anything more. And then in the last race, of course, there was some questionable decision making, and that was really what put a stain on the season, but still a ridiculously good season.
It was literally like Formula One's dream scenario, and then they fucked it up. But now, anyways, to get to the culpability, to get to the clean culpability, the way the rules were applied in the last race, they have never been applied so before. It was completely made up, manufactured in the moment by Michael Massey. And in my opinion, F1 has done everything they could do except give Lewis the championship. They fired Massey, which is a clear indication of you made a mistake and we need to scapegoat you because obviously it was wrong. So that's one thing. Get him out of there. Also love Christian Horner defending Michael Massey. Just absolutely gaslighting everyone as if it was not the most insane thing that's ever happened. But what
we're going to get to some Horner later in this.
Oh, there's going to be Horner. But what irks me the most is the whole we went racing thing. That was Michael Massey's big defense was Toto, we went racing.
They did go racing. That's true.
Did they not go racing for 56 laps prior? It was they had a full race where Lewis was ahead and pulling ahead. It wasn't even close. He was going to beat him by a mile. They raced, Lewis won, and then they were one lap, and he made it one lap knowing Max would win. Like there was no chance that Max wasn't going to win. When he was making that decision, he had to factor in like this is not a fair fight. Max is on fresh softs, loses on old hards. He is going to pass him. And he calculated that and was like, I'm going to do it anyways. And we're going to race. And that's what pissed me off. So ridiculous.
I mean, for full context, there was something in the rules that basically said that the race director had the ability to apply these safety car rules in whatever way they saw fit. And so it was not technically against the rules what Massey did. The only thing was that it had never been done before. And the fact that they fired him is obviously a very tough
one. The point is, yeah, it's in the rules, but the rule is like the only rule he didn't break was the rule that he can't break any rules. Like it's stupid that it's in there.
Yeah.
Like in my opinion, that is in the rule book for safety. Like they put that in there so that if everyone is mad at them, they can say, you know what, this is what we need to do to protect drivers. Like, because that's what his main job is as race director, safety. So I feel like that
actually it's drama creation.
Why that's in there. And then it was a very like extrapolation of the Constitution to like bring it into the actual race. But anyways, as a Lewis fan, it was like super disheartening. And the worst part is as soon as Max crossed the line, you know they're not going to like give it back. Like it was very Saints Rams 2018 NFC Championship where like the pass interference happens, you know it's pass interference, but like there's literally nothing you can do. You just have to sit there. And I feel for Lewis, that must have been like the worst off season ever to just know that there's like legit nothing you can do. Like it's over.
What makes it even worse too, and like makes it worse even as a Max fan, is the fact that like Lewis, not so much Toto, but Lewis like has been super classy about it. And like Max and Christian just like haven't been that great about it. Like they haven't really addressed the fact that like the rules thing was questionable. They've just kind of like rode through, which of course you'd expect them to. But the fact that they are like so like just powering ahead with it, and Lewis is being so classy about the loss, like makes it tough to like feel fully happy for Max. But I'm just riding with the fact that he's the better driver, so he deserved it in the end.
Oh yeah, it's so annoying because it's like I truly think like they were even on points, but it was truly like they both deserved it. Like Max had the great start. Hamilton had this great comeback, like through some adversity, like having a slower car in the middle of the year. Like both teams like fought for it. And then like to have it end like that was just just talk about going out with a whimper for 2021. Upsetting. But anyways, we'll move on just as the world has, just as Lewis Hamilton has. Drive to Survive.
I think we can know that we can be comforted in the fact that it must have been karma for that absolute targeted shunt that Lewis had in Silverstone to Max. We all know that was intentional. And then he was celebrating while Max was in the hospital. Like, and just knew that had to come back and bite him at some point.
No, okay, we're gonna talk Drive to Survive a little bit more, but like going kind of Lewis and Max into Drive to Survive, watching Drive to Survive made me like, and A, this is totally a biased opinion because I like Lewis more, and B, Max is not in Drive to Survive, so he can't defend himself. So those two factors are certainly at play here. But when you watch it across the season, like there's so much validity to the idea that Max just drives like an asshole and like expects you to move. He's like, it's either you move or we crash, and I don't give a shit. And the two times Hamilton stuck in, I think like Silverstone, I genuinely think it was a racing incident. Like I do think that Hamilton had a play at it. Was it a little sketchy? Maybe. No sketchier than Monza when like Max tried to crush him with his tire and just gets out and is like, fuck you, man. Like it doesn't even give a shit.
Yeah. No, the Max not doing interviews thing was like something that his publicist must have just missed on the fucking docket that week, because that's a big mistake. It's such a tough look. And like
no, man, he didn't do it intentionally, and he's not doing it this year either. He's like,
no, I know, like I know he didn't do it intentionally, but like that was just a strategic mistake from him in terms of like his own personal brand. And Lewis is also like such like a clean, like quiet interviewer that like he can spin things in such a way that like while they like do have some validity, it always just turns out that Max looks like an idiot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Lewis wins the branding battle there, I think.
For sure. Any other wider Drive to Survive thoughts?
My main thought was that I was going to make a 2022 prediction that Christian Horner just leaves F1 to pursue reality TV in general, because it seems like he just leans into it every turn. There was like 4 or 5 sequences at like Horner's house with his family and like nobody else's.
Yeah.
I don't know, understand. Like, I think he just like likes the spotlight, likes the TV side, and he might just leave F1 altogether for it, I think.
Straight up, Christian Horner is like my least favorite person on earth. But it brings me to F1 because I hate him so much. So on the real end of things, I just want to ask you, like, as a Red Bull supporter, I know they're not like your favorite team, but like, how can anyone find Christian Horner even like slightly likable? Like, he literally, all he does in Drive to Survive is complain and like mutter under his breath about how like he's so mad at Mercedes. Like, quality line. It's like one of the first episodes. He's like, Toto hasn't built anything at Mercedes. He never had to build something.
That was an insane thing to say.
8 straight drivers championships. Like, I don't care if they handed him the keys to like anything. He still kept it up. Like, and at the end of the day, like, Toto beat Horner last year. Like, obviously Horner has adopted Max Verstappen as his third child. This was everything to him. But like, Mercedes beat Red Bull. Like, that's Toto's job, is like get more money by winning the constructors. So fuck you, Christian. Like, he's just, and the other thing too is how much he hates Lewis, which I find hilarious. Like, he's always like, oh, this guy, like, ugh, there he is again. Like, being, what do you want from Lewis? Like, when he's too boisterous, they hate him. And when he's too humble, they also hate him.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like what Christian Horner is like behind closed doors when he knows he's like not on camera. Because if this is him like putting on the camera face, he's got to be like an absolute bitch behind closed doors.
I don't think he knows his children. Straight up, I don't think he knows them. Every scene he's with his kids, he always asks them about F1. They're like 2, bro. Like, his daughter literally doesn't even know who Max is, and he's always like, every time he's with her, he's like, so who do you think's gonna win the drivers' championship this year? And she's like, I don't fucking know, Dad. Like, buy me a fucking toy or something. Like, let's go out in the yard and play tag.
The thing where he like asks his kids if they're wishing for Max to win the championship.
Yeah.
And then the kid's like, no, that's your wish, Dad. He's like, you're right. Like, these kids, this is the only thing they've heard for like 4 years.
It's like, you know, like the whole like trope of like the dad in the family just wants the kids to be like him. You know, he's a doctor. He forces you to be a doctor. He's like that with his kids, except he just forces them to be as big of Max fans as he is.
Yeah. Do you think, like, what's interesting to me is that it seems like Red Bull, obviously they would just choose to not look at it because they didn't win it, but it seems like Christian doesn't care at all about the Constructors' Championship, which like seems what the team should be liking.
That's what I'm saying.
And it seems like Christian just wants the Drivers' Championship much more. Do you think that's just like because he knows it's the thing they might win? Or like, do you think it's because of his obsession with Max, or what do you think it is?
I think it's truly like he realized so early on that they could not win the constructors, even though they were like winning the constructors like halfway through the year. I think he just like really like didn't think they were going to do it. And he's like, I'll just frame this as like all we care about is Max winning. So like that's everything. Right. But speaking of that and going backwards, I know, sorry, the whole like Abu Dhabi thing of like Checo having like the best 2 laps ever and like slowing Lewis down. So sick. Drive Survive does this whole montage about it. Like, they didn't talk about Checo the entire season. And then everyone's like, oh, see, that's why he's great. Like, that's why he's good. Awesome. Lewis still was going to win the race. Like, that's the thing I don't get. It's not like Checo held him up and that's how Max passed him. That would have been like the craziest thing ever. Lewis still pumped him. And then this whole Massey thing, again, in my opinion, wipes that out. It's like, who cares about those 2 laps where Checo did this great thing because it didn't even matter. Anyways, rant. Ugh. Any other Drive Survive thoughts that don't involve Red Bull or Mercedes?
My only other thought was that Yuki Tsunoda is like even more crazy than I thought he was. Like, during some of his radio, I'd obviously heard like a bit of his radio messages like during the season, but like the fact that he just like yells and says like the car is shit all the time, like as he's throwing it into the wall like every other race, is like the most insane thing ever. I'm so excited to see more of him this year. Yeah,
the rookie's got a tough burn on Drive to Survive. I mean, Mick Schumacher made it out well. He's royalty. They're not going to be mean to him. Yuki didn't look great. Didn't have a great year. Nikita Mazepin, rip, no longer on the grid. Thank the Lord for that. Doesn't deserve a spot. Never did. But holy, did they light him up on Drive to Survive. Like they gave him exactly what he deserved. And it was, again, we talked about this last year. Like, is he having fun? Like, why would you choose, if you're rich and you could do one thing on earth, why would you choose to drive around to the back of the grid and everyone think you're an asshole?
Oh, literally. I think it's like that he obviously thought he would be successful, but like even when he started to be just brutalized in the middle of the season, like it felt like he still felt like he was going to improve and start catching up to Mick, and he still believed that the cars were different, and he was just
they
like
made them switch cars. He's like, we have to switch cars. That's the problem.
That's actually something that I was wondering about. Like, do they ever switch cars? They can't, right? Like,
I think they did. I literally think in this case they did, because like they threatened to like pull the funding if they didn't switch cars because they wanted to try it. But whatever. The only other thing I think that I'll take from Drive Survive, other than Christian Horner being the least likable person on earth and not knowing his children, Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, I was excited to get the kind of like behind the scenes there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, I don't know, the clips I'm seeing now of them, they definitely seem like way more of boys. Like, I think there was a lot to the idea of like everyone thought they would be so chill and so fun together. And like everyone thought Daniel would crush Lando, that they just were in this environment where they like had to hate each other.
Yeah. I don't know if that was just like Drive to Survive cooking stuff up, but I caught that vibe as well.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think that was like real. Like, I think Lando was out to prove something and like was just like, I'm not gonna be this guy's friend just because people tell me I'm gonna be. I don't know.
There was that part where they were like discussing what constituted a crash from Lando.
Yeah.
And like Daniel was like, oh, like I count that as a crash. And then like Lando was like, I don't. And then there was just like that weird pause, which is like obviously just partially editing by Netflix. But I felt the tension there. So
I felt it. It was palpable.
I had a 2022 prediction that there might be some more tension growing between those boys, but we'll see.
Alrighty. Sounds good. Okay. That's 2021. It's in the past, like we said. Lewis Hamilton, rightful champion, put the 8th one in his books, and I'm really mad about it. Anyways, 2022. New year, new era of Formula One. So for those of you who don't know, every some odd years, F1 basically changes a number of regulations in an attempt to improve or change the racing. So one of the biggest issues of the previous turbo hybrid era was like the inability to follow cars really closely, and it led to less passing and stuff, which is what we want to see. That's the exciting stuff. So these new cars are a little bit smaller. They use downforce so they can get closer and follow closer. So the hope is a lot of passing on track, a lot of things like that. I don't know. Is it going to work? Is it not? I like that they're trying, though, so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, a lot of new-looking cars, a lot of new designs, so that's exciting. So going into 2022, we're just going to do a quick rundown of every team, who their drivers are, and our perspective of their goals and what they might achieve for the season. So do you want to go top to bottom or bottom to top?
Let's go top to bottom.
Start
with the highest energy for the biggest
Perfectly, teams. Yeah. We've only talked Mercedes and Red Bull, so let's just keep talking. First place last year in the Constructors, 8 straight Constructors championships for Mercedes, but going into 2022, they don't look as strong. Fish, what are your thoughts?
It's hard to tell, yeah. There's been a lot of talk amongst the testing of that Mercedes isn't looking that strong, and that Lewis and George are both coming out and saying, well, I don't know, I think we're going to start out behind Red Bull and possibly Ferrari as well. It's hard to know whether that's just kind of the acting that Mercedes always puts
bagging.
But I don't know. I like the look of their car, and the fact that they came out with those insane side pods at the second testing is certainly a shocker. So we'll see if that gets through all the qualifications. But I think they're still the favorite to take home the Constructors. That's where I'd put them.
Really? Okay. See, here's my thing with Mercedes. I am really confused. Like, obviously, so this whole no side pod design, super cool. I think it makes their car look really nice. The body, not the livery. We'll get to that later. But I don't know why they wouldn't use that for both testing. So again, for clarity, first testing this year was in Spain, and then the second test was in Bahrain. First test, Mercedes has a normal looking car. Second test, they basically have a completely new looking car. So I feel like they threw away the first weekend. It's such a crazy design. I don't think anyone would have copied them. Like, I don't think in a week Ferrari would have gone from the bathtub side pods to no side pods. So I'm a little bit confused, and I feel like they kind of wasted some days. And yeah, I think George and Lewis might be sandbagging, but I think they also might be telling the truth that just like we need another couple weeks to like tune this thing up.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that nobody would have copied them, but I'm sure that's why they did it, like for the risk that somebody would. They obviously felt like they had some sort of advantage, and if you can keep it for an extra week to stop people from copying it, then I think that's exactly why they did it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think the thing about Mercedes is that like I would put their drivers lineup up ahead of Red Bulls and probably ahead of Ferraris as well. So I think that might be the tipping point. And even if they aren't right there at the offset, they have such a strong development that I still think they're going to find it at some point.
Yeah, and talking driver lineup, I should have said that at the start when I introduced Mercedes. So Mercedes has Lewis Hamilton, as we've talked about, 8-time world championship. Some would say 7, I say 8. There's really no need to go over the resume there. New driver to the team this year, young stud George Russell. A couple of Englishmen driving the Mercedes these days. So Russell, first 3 years in F1 have all been at Williams. He's pulled some impressive results, but obviously driving around at the back of the grid. This is totally new. He's expected to win races. He's expected to podium consistently. That being said, he comes with a great pedigree. He's an F3 champion, an F2 champion, and like I said, has some strong results in F1. So if you're looking at Mercedes, it's like great drivers, consistently great team. Why wouldn't they be good again? So yeah, I don't know if they're the odds-on favorite to win the constructors, but I don't see them plummeting at all, even if it takes them a couple weeks to get together. Do you think there's any chance George really puts the screws to Lewis and can potentially actually beat him?
I think there definitely is. It's hard to know. Like George is under a lot of pressure because he's been like Toto's golden boy for like 4 years, and everybody's kind of known he's been on this ascending path, and now he's here and he's in like a new car that he hadn't tested before. Like he's in a new situation, but Lewis is also in that same situation where he doesn't have kind of the same car that he's had, obviously getting upgraded for the last few years. And so I think there's a chance that George is just like the breakout star. He's the guy that everyone's been saying he is. And if he is, then there's a chance that he takes it to Lewis. But what I don't know is how the team orders will come into it. I think it'll depend on kind of the start that they have, but we've seen in the past that Mercedes is very willing to put in strict team orders, and the fact that this might be Lewis's one or two last seasons might just stop George if he doesn't get a strong start right away. What do you think?
And I don't know. Honestly, so one thing is that Lewis knows George is really talented. So apparently last year, this is obviously a conjecture. I don't know. Apparently they wanted to move George into the car last year, and Lewis basically put the kibosh on that and said no because he didn't want to be dealing with George. That scares me. Lewis is obviously like worried about him. But then again, I think like what happened last year is really going to spill over into this season. I genuinely think that if Lewis won last year and has the outright record of World Drivers' Championships, like not everyone's ever going to say he's the best, but the best sort of resume of all time, I think he would have been more willing. Like, let's say George comes in hot, he might be more willing to like hand the keys over and kind of like support George, where now I feel like he wants it so bad that like he's already told Mercedes, like, no, like I'm your guy. Like George can help us win, but like I have to be the guy. And I think George, out of like deference, might also kind of let off the gas a little bit more. Like if Lewis is very standoffish in like, there's a lot of time that they're going to spend together. And if Lewis is kind of setting the tone of like, no, you drive behind me, it's going to be tough to overcome on track.
No, and we know that Lewis is like an absurd human with the mind games when he wants to put them to somebody, as we saw with Rosberg back in the day, and like even Bottas to an extent. So yeah, I think you're probably right there that Lewis really wants this one, and he'll do everything and leverage like the power he has in the team to make that happen. But also like we just don't know anything about George. If he's just like someone who says, fuck it, this is my time, then that could be something that causes internal pressure, but also could be very spicy to observe.
Yeah. Also, shout out George for an all-time tweet. Hate to go back to Abu Dhabi again, but he had already retired from the race when this sort of whole debacle was going on. And he tweeted out something like crazy, like all caps, like, no, this can't happen, like robbery. Love it. Love to see the pure bias on the grid. So go, George. I hope they have a great year. But yeah, I'll still tip my cap to Lewis there. All right, let's move on to the main rivals, the Red Bull. So obviously Red Bull last year had World Drivers Champion Max Verstappen. He'll be returning this year. And his teammate is Sergio Perez or Checo. A very solid driver lineup, a car that looks very strong in testing, and Max is toting the one on his car, which again makes me hate him even more than I already do.
Ridiculous move.
Thoughts on Red Bull?
I think Red Bull will be super strong. I think it'll just be dependent on probably Checo against George and maybe the Ferraris that will be the determining factor and if they can really compete for the constructors. Checo's like always been kind of there. He's been strong, but last year he like wasn't a great qualifier. And therefore he kind of had some races where his results looked better than they were because he was driving with slower cars. Therefore he was getting overtakes, looked exciting. And that's really not what they need this year. They just need him to be qualifying up at the top of the grid and then just stacking points on points on points if they're going to win the constructors. So yeah. I think it'll probably come down to Checo because we know Max is going to be strong.
Perez legit last year had like, if there was an award for the most irrelevant drivers of the day, it would be him because he kept getting drivers of the day because he started 16th, like 10 races in a row, and then would finish 5th. Like nobody cares. Yeah. You're going to pass all those cars. But anyways, whatever. Yeah, I think they need a lot better from him. I think one thing in his favor is that, like you said, he's not the best qualifier, and these cars are basically meant to pass on track. So maybe that will help Sergio out. We obviously saw what he did in Abu Dhabi. Like, he is a great racer. It's just he's kind of there, like you said, for consistency. And if he's consistently qualifying low and can only get up a certain amount, that's going to hurt Red Bull in the long run. But it seems like they got a bit of a rocket ship of a car. Max, do you think he defends? Do you think he defends as well as he attacks the Drivers' Championship? Do you think it gets his psyche? This is a new thing for him. This is a new thing for basically everyone in the sport for the last 10 years to have like a new champion.
I think he defends just as well. I think he's such a psycho that I think his mentality just like almost never changes, which is just like put the car wherever it needs to be to win. And as you said, that might not be the most healthy thing for everybody on the grid, but I think he'll just go out, be a bulldozer like he always is. And I think he'll defend just as well as he attacks.
Yeah, I think he's such a, like, he's so bent in the head that like now he has it, he won't give it up kind of thing. But I actually think that this year is going to be a lot closer. Like, I actually think George is, while a distant threat to the championship, like he is a threat, unlike Bottas was last year. And I also think both of the Ferraris have like a legitimate chance. They have great drivers. They look like they have a great car. So like maybe Max and Lewis both have to like kind of quit the sparring a little bit more. True. And I wonder if that will affect Max more than Lewis, because Lewis is like pretty good at getting out of the way. Whereas like if Max crashes out in 3 or 4 races, maybe like a surprise person comes into the fold, like a Leclerc comes out of nowhere. And it's like, because you're DNFing, it could matter more this year because there could be just more people winning races. So I'll be interested to see if that kind of changes his psyche at all. But as of right now, my opinion, Red Bull look like the biggest threat in terms of like best car on the grid. They top the timesheets in testing. Basically testing, it means nothing. Nobody knows what testing is. I think like Yuki Tsunoda finished like 4th in testing last year. Like it's all bull, but I do think Red Bull kind of wanted to like show everyone up at the end, because there was like all these crazy runs. Like Magnussen was leading the timesheets at one point, and then Red Bull basically came out on the last day and was like, here we are, deal with it. Like we're gonna dominate again. So that's a little bit scary. They look tuned up and ready to go into Bahrain at least.
It also is a very like childish Horner thing to do, to be like, we got to make a statement here though. Whereas like Toto would just chill and be fine with everybody thinking their shit. So you never know.
That's the thing. I do genuinely think like Mercedes might be sandbagging, right? But like Red Bull's doing the opposite of being like, we're good and we know it and you should all know it.
You think so? You're saying like you'd take Russell over Checo in terms of who's going to finish higher points here this season?
I honestly don't know, but I think it's like one of those things where I think Checo is going to finish, like, let's say a scale of 1 to 5. Checo is going to have a 3 of a season, like no matter what. Where like Russell could have a 5 or a 1. Like I think there's just so much more potential in George than there is in Checo. And like Checo like was honestly offhand like kind of bad last year. Like a lot of people were saying they should replace him in the seat. Like I think George is a much better racer. It's just whether he fits in a Mercedes, gets used to the car and all that stuff. That might get in the way, but I don't think it's too much of a fight between the two, to be frank.
George is so like put together on and off track that it seems like he'll be able to hold it, like handle everything, handle Lewis, handle the new car. He's like such a polished person, even though he's so young. And
He almost won a race in a Mercedes that was Lewis's car. He's like a foot taller than Lewis. Like if anyone can do it, it's George.
I think he's underrated right now, but there's just so many unknowns that you can't really put him too highly.
All right. Moving on to last year's bronze medalist in the constructors, the oldest name in Formula One, the most important name in Formula One, and that's Ferrari. Ferrari is a great driver lineup, two of the sexiest men on the grid, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Carlos actually finished ahead of Charles last year, which was surprising as the team's kind of been built around Leclerc for the last couple of years, and he ousted Sebastian Vettel. But a great driver lineup, crazy looking car, absolute fat.
Absolute tough.
Thick side pods on the Ferrari. So I guess the question is, do we think Ferrari has it right or every other team has it wrong? Because right now it kind of looks like they have it right.
That's what it looks like. And I'm almost inclined to like believe them. I feel like because of probably some recency bias and just because of the way that we've interacted with the sport, we kind of forget that like Ferrari was the second best team and fighting for races like 2 years ago. And so they have a very strong like engineering side that have obviously put in their homework to get back to the top of the grid. And probably only because they haven't been as strong in the last couple of years, there's a tendency to doubt them. But I think they have just as strong a team as anybody, and they have great drivers. So I would hedge that they have got it right, I think.
Yeah. I think when I first saw the Ferrari compared to the other cars, I was like, they're literally going to come in last. Like it's so different that it doesn't make any sense. But testing, they've looked incredible. Like sans the last day from Red Bull, they were the best team in testing. Like they looked great, super consistent, super fast. And like you said, they have such a great team. But I think two things have really, or one main thing that's really gone in Ferrari's favor is last year they knew they were going to come third or fourth. I don't think they really cared. Yeah. And they pivoted to 2022 much earlier than any of the other sort of big competition. And they have a lot of money. They have a lot of resources. And I think that's why, and like you said, like we should probably lend credence to think they got it right rather than got it wrong, because they've spent a lot of time getting this car ready.
The car is just like such a yacht that like it doesn't look like it can possibly be fast or like maneuverable, but I guess time will tell.
It's super interesting to see, like, especially compared to the Mercedes, like side by side, they legit look like different sports. Like they are completely different cars, which is super different to the last generation where they all look the exact same. But I guess the idea, and again, this is me explaining it to a person who knows close to nothing about the technical side of F1. These cars are built on downforce. So it's about pushing air under the car and basically the car sucking itself down to the ground. So those wide side pods, there's basically no air hitting them because all the air has been sucked underneath the car. And it actually, the wider surface can, I guess, create like a more sticky car to the ground. So maybe the wide works, but I think it's cool that, I guess, like for lack of a better term, there's more than one way to skin a cat under these regulations. Yeah. Like Ferrari looks fast, Red Bull looks fast, Mercedes looks fast, and all their cars look really different, which is cool, I guess, compared to the old version.
Yeah, and it's interesting that like even after people have seen that design, which is the scary part for Ferrari, that you've seen like Ferrari from week 1 to week 2, or sorry, Mercedes from week 1 to week 2, and Red Bull from week 1 to week 2 have both like cut away at their side pods. Yeah. Red Bull's been less pronounced, but they've been like sculpting them down. Mercedes obviously made the huge cutoff, and so they're getting further away from the boat rather than converging to it. which is what's scary for Ferrari. But it seems like, yeah, as you said, it's just a surface area thing, and the fact that they have more downforce just gives them more power in the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I'm excited to just like have what feels like a third team in the mix. Like I said, like the whole thing about Max maybe having a more. It's cool if there's 6 people competing for a championship rather than 2. So if a Ferrari's good, it's good for everyone, and I really hope it pans out. And we will come back to Ferrari later when I make some predictions because I have a good feeling about Ferrari this year. All right, I think that's good for the red car. Let's move on to the orange car, the McLaren. So McLaren has been resurgent as of late. I think it was 2018. They pretty much bottomed out, looked like bottom of the midfield, or 2017. And they have since kind of turned everything around. They've had a great couple years. Last year, finishing 4th, fighting really hard with Ferrari right down to the end. They have a great driver lineup. Lando Norris, sort of the young gun last year, outperformed expectations, just signed a massive contract extension. McLaren believes in him. A lot of people believe in him. Is he the next great, or is he just good? We'll see. And then everyone's favorite Australian, Daniel Ricciardo. Tough year last year, but had some good finishes toward the end, and I think he's trying to carry momentum into 2022. From a testing perspective, the McLaren has been very fast. They are having a brake issue that they feel they'll get sorted out. So a little bit of a good-bad kind of test from McLaren.
Yeah, I think McLaren's like almost flown under the radar a bit because there's been so much focus on Ferrari. But it's hard to know where they'll finish. But if Ricciardo's back on it and Norris is back on it, like I would hope that they could maybe stretch and like be fighting with this top 3 for like some portion of the season. Like that would be an awesome thing to see. And the fact that, yeah, like Ferrari's just been so drastic in their changes makes me think that McLaren maybe just like flying under the radar a bit. The other thing is that McLaren got more on top of the porpoising issue that a lot of teams were struggling with in testing. And so maybe they just have a design that really does suit this car. Maybe they're masking a bit of pace too. At least maybe that's just my biased hope, but yeah. I think that would be great to see as well.
Yeah. And the term porpoising, just a quick explanation. Like I said, these cars basically are meant to suck the car down to the ground. And sometimes it does too good of a job and the car actually bounces off the ground, goes back up, and then sucks itself back down. So it creates basically like the drivers have door hinges on their neck and they're rattling down the straights. There's some good clips of Pierre Gasly. It looks pretty hilarious. Basically, every team has had this issue to some degree, except McLaren. My concern there is if this issue does end up happening to McLaren at some point,
right,
they won't be able to fix it as quickly as other teams that are now getting it out of the way. But I mean, if it didn't happen, maybe it won't happen. So probably not a huge worry there. My thing with McLaren is like, it's cool that I really think the top 4 teams, the prospective top 4 teams, all have like incredible driver lineups. Like I don't think there's really anyone that I would replace except maybe Perez. And right. Perez sort of does his job, let's call it that. But I genuinely think the rest of them have like that like sort of high upside and excitement going into this year when the new regs kind of come into play. And Daniel Ricciardo specifically, I think, is kind of like a potential gold mine because he is sort of such a good racer. And these cars are meant to be better for racing. So yeah. maybe we see some Danny Rick victory podium action that we didn't see a lot of last year.
Where do you think the McLaren driver lineup stacks up against each other this year?
That's what I was going to say. Like that's who comes out ahead is, I think, genuinely like a huge topic of debate. Because I think Lando's coming off such a great season and Daniel's coming off such a bad season, sort of relative to expectations. But I actually think their talent is almost identical. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give the nod to Daniel. I think Daniel's going to have the better year. Truly, I think like this team has become built around Lando. I think they're going to want Lando, but I think Daniel's just better on track. And if these cars are as good as they're supposed to be at racing, I think we'll see Daniel Ricciardo kind of showing everyone why he's so good.
So you think Lando's just a qualifying merchant, eh? Might drive on Sunday?
I just think Daniel like was so bad last year, and like Lando did pump him. Like it wasn't close. Like Lando was definitely better. I just think like there's so much room. Like at the end of the day, like Daniel Ricciardo like kicked Seb Vettel out of Red Bull like at the height of his powers. Like he raced Max Verstappen like legit almost even for like multiple years, and we all saw what Max did last year. Like he's so good that I'm just gonna kind of like maybe 2022 is his year.
I back it. I feel like I've developed like a through like no valid reason, like a somewhat like anti-Lando feeling. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's because of like Drive to Survive
it
or the
was
fact
Monza, man. It was Monza.
yeah,
I seen a
he's like
switch.
no longer like the plucky understudy who's like coming up. He's just like kind of a good driver now. And yeah, like at Monza, he was like kind of being a dick, like saying he should be allowed to pass Daniel. And so I don't know. I feel like I have an anti-Lando bias here, but I don't know why. And we'll see if
Yeah.
he wins it back.
What do you think of the contract extension on Lando? It's like 10 million years. I don't know. He'll be driving until he's 80. Do you like it? You hate it? Do you think?
I
What do you
love
think
it for
of Lando's
McLaren.
side as well?
Yeah,
Lando's
I
side.
love it for McLaren. I don't necessarily love it for Lando. Like
That's what I'm thinking.
I feel like like maybe that Perez seat or like any of the big teams, if any of those guys don't pan out, like he's basically making a bet that McLaren will make the jump from a team perspective to have a championship winning car. And yes, like the security is nice, and that's not always something that comes in F1, but it feels like he should have kind of bet on himself a bit more and just like taken a shorter term and then maybe been able to re-up or move or be more flexible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a big mistake from Lando because you're totally right. He's betting on McLaren to basically leapfrog this elite sort of top three, which they never have in this era and most likely won't. And let's say he didn't, let's say he bet on himself, 2-year contract, has a couple bad years. Someone's going to pick him up down the grid. And they have just as much, I think, a back of the grid team like Williams could pass McLaren a lot easier than McLaren can pass Mercedes and Red Bull. Like, I don't know if that was the right move for Lando. I think it's a great deal for McLaren, though.
Yeah.
Good business on it. Apparently, Red Bull was reaching out to Lando, and Mercedes was also in talks potentially. Like people wanted him, so they locked him up for a long time. All right, let's speed through the bottom here. These ones should go a lot faster. 5th place last year, a strong finish. Were they 5th or were they 6th? I don't even know. AlphaTauri, the driver lineup of Pierre Gasly, former Red Bull driver for a hot minute, now back in the junior team, and Yuki Tsunoda, everyone's video killed the radio star. Great radio, not a great driver. We'll see. Any thoughts on AlphaTauri? I love their livery. That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, I love the livery as well. I think the big question is like how the sister teams do this year, just because normally I think it's a bit more predicted that like the teams are a bit further behind on the regulations. Like AlphaTauri is Red Bull's sister team. They normally have a car that's similar to the year before Red Bull, but now with these new regulations, it's just kind of up in the air. And so I think kind of the sister teams or the B teams as they go will be an interesting talking point as well. Yeah. But yeah, I think either Tsunoda is going to be great or he's going to be shite again. And I'm rooting for Gasly to just like put in the strong performances and put his name in the ring for whenever Perez decides to stop coming 8th.
Yeah, I think this is Yuki Tsunoda's last year in F1. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's consistent enough. Like, obviously, that's coming from a rookie season, so we'll see. But I don't know. I think there's so much talent that's basically stuck in F2 right now that I think Red Bull, being the sort of swift operators that they are, won't hesitate to kind of kick him out after this year. So, Yuki, I hope you have a good 20 races. It's been fun knowing you. On the Pierre side, very excited for Pierre. He had an amazing year last year. Like, going through his race results, kind of watching Drive to Survive, like just remembering the sort of performances he was pulling out. I think he's comfortable in that team. He likes the team. I'm really excited for him. And he also kind of needs it. Like, he needs to have a big year this year because it's either the Alpine seat, and like I'm sure they would love to have 2 French drivers if Fernando is trying to hang it up. So he basically needs to outduel Fernando at a minimum and potentially outduel Perez if he wants the Red Bull seat. So I think he's got to kind of put up or shut up and really drive the wheels off the car this year. And I think he can. I'm a gas man. I'm a pure gas
He doesn't
man.
want to go to Alpine. The Alpine's an absolute dog. It's going to be worse than
Yeah.
AlphaTauri for years.
I know, but he just wants to get out of Red Bull, I think. Like, he doesn't want to be in the B team. Because if you're in AlphaTauri, you know you can never win a championship.
Yeah, it's true.
They will always come behind Red Bull. So it's like he either has to get to Red Bull or go to Alpine and hope somehow Alpine hits the jackpot. Like, I think that's kind of his only thing. So go Pierre Gasman. Love the frosted tips that he's usually featuring. So he's a G and a late breaker. So
if he wins the championship this year, I will officially go beard, no mustache for an entire year.
Yes, and you have to frosted tip it.
Yes, of course.
A little bit. All right. Speaking of Alpine finished 6th last year. Alpine is the racing brand of French engine manufacturer Renault. Their driver lineup is Esteban Ocon, our newest race winner from last year, and former race winner and former world champion Fernando Alonso. Alpine, interesting livery this year. We'll get to the liveries after for quick thoughts, but any thoughts on Alpine? I don't know. I'm seeing them kind of being destined for the middle again.
Yeah.
6-7.
My hope for Alpine last year was that like Alonso would come along and be a rock star, and Ocon would become what he's been looking like he might become for years. And I just don't think necessarily that the car is there or that either of the drivers are going to be like make the biggest step. So yeah, I think they're destined for like a pretty mediocre finish. And like if anyone's going to get passed by the back teams, I think it's going to be them. And so they're in like kind of a all downside scenario unless they pull something out of the hat.
I agree. I think they're going to be lower tier this year. I think they're at a huge disadvantage being their own engine. Like they had upside in terms of like if the Renault engine's the best engine on the grid, then they can win because they're the only ones with it. But if it's not the best power unit on the grid, then they are fucked because everyone else has different engines. So it's not looking great for them because it doesn't look like the fastest car. In terms of drivers, I like Fernando. I think he's, let's say, softened in his old age. He seems much more fun. And he had a couple cool races last year kind of showing off his old steam. So I don't know. I genuinely think this might be his last year, though. I think Fernando came back wanting to win. And 2022 is where Alpine either shows him they can win or they can't. And if they can't, I think he'll kind of just quit. So it could be the end of a great there, but I'm excited to see what he can do, especially with the whole idea of these cars being better for racing. Fernando is a racer, so that should be good. Speaking of contracts, I think one of the worst contracts in F1 is Esteban Ocon's. I don't know why they rushed to extend him. I would have much rather put Pierre Gasly there.
The race winner.
Oscar Piastri was kind of killing it last year at this time. He's an Alpine driver. He would have looked great in that seat. Like, I feel like Ocon is good. Like, he's a 7th place team kind of driver. Like, I don't know why they had to sign him for like 4 years or whatever they did.
Yeah, there's always this. I think they're basically just making the bet that he'll materialize into what he was supposed to be a couple of years ago, which was like the guy who would maybe get the second Mercedes seat. Like he was one of Toto's guys. And then like he just got outperformed by George and a few other guys and kind of lost his fight for that seat. But there's still some hope that he turns out to be that really stellar driver. And he's obviously young. So they're taking a big bet on him. I agree that he seems relatively average, but who are we to know?
Yeah. Well, he's French. So maybe they
The
just.
other thing for Alpine is that they have Valtteri Bottas in their section of the grid now, and an absolute bowling ball. So
yes, well, he helped Esteban get that contract because I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure they signed him like right after that win, and we can all say that win is a credit to the flying Finn. All right, let's move on. So next is Aston Martin. Speaking of a team that I think might be trending in the wrong direction. Aston Martin, their two drivers are former world champion Sebastian Vettel and everybody's favorite rich kid, Lance Stroll. But really, some of the bigger characters at Aston Martin are off the track. Lawrence Stroll is the team owner, basically resurrected the team from financial demise a few years back and has now been sinking money into it. They got James Bond sponsorships. They are trying to be this sort of cool brand on the grid. They're building a campus somewhere in the UK to be this like Tesla level manufacturing piece for F1, but they don't look too great. And I don't know. I don't have a lot of excitement for them too. I think like them and Alpine are kind of like 7-8, 6-7-8. I don't know.
I think the biggest win that will come out for Aston Martin this year is the fact that Lawrence Stroll just won the dad competition this year. Dimitri's gone, and
That's
Lawrence
true.
won just by the fact that he's not Russian, and so that's a big dub for him. He's got his son still in the car and still going to be able to push him
Now,
through.
spin zone. Now all the focus is back on Lance as being the only daddy's boy.
That's true. That's tough.
You know what I mean? I feel like Lance got a real pass last year because of Spinner at the back.
I think Lance is either blindly confident or just blissfully unaware of that attention. Like
blissfully unaware.
He just doesn't even acknowledge it and just like rides through despite his mediocre results. And so
Lance is in the clouds. I think he's just driving around. And you know what? Honestly, like the thing with Lance though is he's like actually kind of good sometimes, but like just on the whole, like it's similar to like what I said about Ocon. He's a 7th place team driver. Lance is probably like an 8th place team driver. Preferably a team that needs money. But in this case, he is the money. So he'll keep driving. Sebastian Vettel last year actually had a couple of good performances. I think he had 2 seconds. One of them was a disqualification, which is kind of crazy for fuel being left in at the end of the race, but whatever. But again, similar. I mean, the Alpine driver lineup and the Aston driver lineup, pretty similar. I think Seb might do the exact same thing as Fernando. Like if the Aston sucks, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better, I think he might also leave.
Yeah. Seb like has such a strong, like there are some Seb stands.
Oh yeah. And everyone used to hate him. Max Verstappen, take lessons.
Just for the mental health of Twitter and the community, I'd like to see Seb do well because I think there's going to be some meltdowns if he doesn't. But yeah, I think like unless the car is markedly better than what it looks like, Seb's going to be in for a frustrating season. And he's got Lance across from him, so tough to beat that too.
Again, yeah. And you know what? We revisited it, or we talked about this last year. Let's revisit it here. Like I think one thing for Seb too is he seems like, again, very similar to Fernando. I'm telling you, these teams, mirror images. He seems to become like a lot nicer in his old age. And I think he would have a lot more fun if his teammate was also cool. Like I think Lance being there, he's probably like, my car sucks. My teammate's an asshole. Like, why am I doing this? Like, give me Yuki. Like, let me drive around with Yuki. We'd be boys. But Seb, I hope you stay because, yeah, you're right. He makes people happy, and I enjoy him. Also, as a balding young man, his rebound on the hair front is just something to aspire to. Truly,
it's been absolutely glorious. He looks like he's 25 again.
He's truly being an inspiration in ways he does not even know. All right, let's move on to last year's 8th place finisher. Sort of a farce of an 8th place because of the crazy Belgian Grand Prix, but that was Williams. So they have lost perpetual Williams All-Star, George Russell, to Mercedes. So their new driver lineup is Nicholas Latifi, Mr. Sunday, Canadian, land of the Maple Leaf King, and his partner this year is Alexander Albon. Former Red Bull driver joining Williams. I don't have a lot to say about Williams. I think, again, 8th place looks like about the best they could do.
Yeah, I think the exciting thing for Williams is that they've clearly been like on the track of improvement for the last 2 or 3 years. Like they're clearly focusing on kind of doing it right, getting the back of house stuff first, like bringing in some experienced people to run the team. And at some point, hopefully those gains will start showing off. And I mean, it could be this year. You could see them kind of hop Alfa Romeo or Aston Martin or somebody. And so, yeah, like I'm rooting for them just for the fact that they seem to be trying to do it right and taking the long-term approach versus trying to like buy success or anything like that. And so I'm rooting for them. And also I think Latifi, out of the shadow of Russell, could just kind of find his groove.
Yeah.
And Albon in a bit less of a stressful situation might be strong too. So I have optimism for them.
I have a few things to hit on for Williams. One, I think you talked about leadership super briefly. Breakout performance from Jost Capito on Drive to Survive. That man gave me like such a hit of serotonin, like just pure joy when he was on screen. Like when George was doing well, like that guy was firing me up. So he seems like a good guy. I trust everything Jost does. That's one. Number two, speaking of the driver lineup, one, I think Alex Albon was a crazy choice.
Really?
Not because I don't think he's talented enough, but because Williams, I think, really screwed Mercedes on that seat. Like, I think so Williams, for background, is powered by Mercedes. They have a Mercedes engine. They have a very close relationship with Mercedes, obviously, taking George Russell last year from that team and kind of having that connection through George. So when the seat opened up, a lot of people thought Mercedes would have influence over it, very similar to how Ferrari has influence over the second seat at Alfa Romeo. They're not necessarily sister teams, but they're so closely linked that they have sort of influence. Will de Vries, our guy, Formula E, former F2 champ, would have looked really nice in that seat, I thought. Really just anyone from sort of a Mercedes background I thought would get it. So I'm really surprised that Williams went with Albon. It's a huge win for Horner. And again, King Gaslighter, when he was trying to beef Toto for trying to block the seat, it's exactly what Toto should have done. Moves of a winner, moves of a smooth operator. Shove it, Christian. But anyways, I was surprised. Now, again, on the Albon point, I think Nicholas Latifi can bury his career. Like, if Latifi is better than him, like, Albon's done. He's finished.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Latifi has like such a reputation of being like mediocre to shit that like if Albon doesn't beat him by like even a decent margin, like he's done, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Latifi's a dangerous driver to drive with. Like, he's a dangerous teammate. Because if he beats you, you're probably out of the sport.
He's a career ender.
But he's not that bad. Like, he's not that bad that it's completely impossible. You know? He could.
Yeah, he's the exact type that like you're worried that he's gonna like perform at his best and just edge you out.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anything, like it might just be a sign that Toto's losing his grip on the grid and could just be a power shift.
The Terminator runs strong. All right, bottom two, but could see some big changes, especially in this name. Alfa Romeo, a disappointing 9th place finish last year. They have completely changed their driver lineup. So they, as their new lead driver, former Mercedes driver, 4-time, I think, constructor champion, Valtteri Bottas. So we all know him. We're very familiar. He's fast. He's fun. We all like the Finn. And F2 rookie, I believe he finished second in F2 last year, Guan Yu Zhou, or Zhou Guan Yu. We're still not sure which is the correct way to go about it. So we're going to go with Guan Yu Zhou for today.
I'm going to wait till Brendel says it.
But an exciting rookie. He's had good success in F2, but he is there because of the financial contributions he gave to Alfa Romeo, but that's not necessarily unique on the grid. So we'll give him a chance. Any thoughts on Alfa?
I'm just excited to see Bottas kind of flying and without the pressure. Like I want to see him just kind of like throwing it out on track and not stressing too much. And I think this will be a good year for him. I don't know anything about like where their car is going to stack up, but I'm mostly just excited to see VB free ball out of it. Yeah.
I think VB is going to be like the like random podium guy this year. Like he's just going to get like 3 scattered podiums where he just has really good races because we all know he's so fast and like is a great driver that I just think he'll kind of pull something out. And like I said, these cars are kind of, you don't know what's going to happen. So I think VB is going to have a good year. He's going to have fun. And I think he's hoping that over the coming years, Alpha can become a real contender, which remains to be seen. In terms of Guan Yu Zhou, I think Guan Yu Zhou is potentially the new Nicholas Latifi. Latifi might be moving up slightly. Like I feel like Latifi is a pay driver. Guan Yu Zhou is a pay driver. So whenever you have a pay driver, whether it's fair or not, they are held to a different standard by fans. And if you don't perform, people kind of hate you. And not that people hate Nicholas Latifi, but they're just kind of like meh. And I feel like Guan Yu Zhou could be just kind of meh.
Yeah, it's up to him to kind of, the burden of proof is on the pay drivers whenever they come in. And so they kind of have to just overcome the natural bias it is to feel like they didn't necessarily earn it, even though he's had strong performances. So, yeah, I'm hopeful. I think him and Bottas will be a good team, and we'll see. It'll be exciting to see Bottas in like a leadership role too.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If there's one thing going for Guan Yu Zhou, it's that like he has VB as a teammate, and I feel like VB is like probably the only person I'd want to drive with on the grid, like as my sort of senior driver. Like I think he'll be happy if Zhou is good, and he'll be helpful if Zhou is bad. Like I think
there is a chance that if there's team orders to let Zhou through Bottas just drives the car.
Yeah, no. Yeah, 100%. He's not listening.
That radio lasted the last time in his career, and if he hears it one more time, he's going to drive the car off the track.
No, he's not listening. That's 100% sure. If he gets that order, he's driving through the pit lane at 150, like aiming for people. He is not going to be stopping anything. All right, last but potentially not least, the Haas. Haas's largest character is obviously off the racetrack, Günther Steiner. Everyone's a fan. Everyone loves Günther, and everyone wants to see Günther have some peace and happiness this year. So that's what we're hoping for Günther. His driver lineup this year consists of son of potentially the greatest F1 driver in history, Lewis, maybe, Mick Schumacher, and new partner replacing the ill-fated Nikita Mazepin is kind of a resurgent favorite, Kevin Magnussen. Talk about a left field pick. Were you thinking Magnussen? Who were you thinking for the seat? Because I know it wasn't Magnussen. Who did you think it was going to be?
I did not know, but what I didn't think it was going to be Magnussen because, like, I've always thought Günther hates Magnussen. Like,
yeah, I thought everyone kind of hated him.
Back in the fucking day when, like, Günther would just be swearing at Kevin, like, saying he hates him, that kind of shit. And, like, so I did not expect Magnussen to come back just because I thought Günther would slam the door on the whole Grosjean-Magnussen era and never let the door open again. But it's kind of a pick that makes sense from a knows the team, a little bit less risk than Nikita now that he's gone. And so I don't hate it.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I was interested to know how they were going to go about it. I really thought it was going to be Nico Hülkenberg, just in terms of like veteran, good driver, kind of been around the sport, like being sort of the super sub the last couple years. So I thought that was a potential pick. I heard a lot of buzz about Giovinazzi because of the Ferrari engine, but I thought that was like potentially the worst choice, like kind of like middling driver, not a lot to necessarily teach, Mick Schumacher, things like that. Then I thought maybe Piastri. There was some Piastri chatter. That's exciting. But then again, we're going back into like two super young drivers on a pretty bad team. So it's probably not the best setup. So I think K-Mag makes a ton of sense. Like I didn't think about it at all, but now that it's happened, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm pretty sure I thought people didn't like Kevin Magnussen. Everybody's loving Kevin Magnussen now that he's back. Like everyone's fired up that K-Mag is back on the grid.
I think everyone just feels bad that like him and Grosjean both got gassed for like Schumacher with the name and then Mazepin with the money, and they both got like kind of just chucked out of Formula One, like despite the fact that they weren't like retiring or anything like that. And so the fact that it's just kind of a redemption arc is like something people are happy about. But
no, 100%. But I think Haas is, in all seriousness, moving in the right direction. Like taking your alkali off the car was the best thing they've done in years. Like Mazepin, his son, and the father were just like an absolute cancer in that team. Get rid of them. Gene Haas has more than enough money to support that team. Stop taking shitty sponsors on and just pay for it yourself and move forward. And also, they've been putting in good times. Like they've had probably the best testing out of the bottom half of the teams from last year, like out of nowhere. Like Magnussen topped the timesheets. I think Schumacher finished like top 5 or something, like crazy. Like
there was a discussion that they were just throwing out a lap to try and get sponsors back in. So
100% it was a glory lap, but I don't care.
See Rich Energy back on the car before that.
Oh my god. I think it's good news for them. Also, again, going back to Drive to Survive, Gunter Steiner and Mick Schumacher doing the ads for the German IKEA or wherever the hell they were at was like legit the funniest thing I've ever seen. Gunter doing the interviews after being like, I'm not a proud person. Like, I'll take pictures in front of anything. I was dying. I love Gunter. Like, he's a blue collar lad just trying to keep that team afloat.
I find it like amazing that Gunther Steiner still has his job. Like, not because I think he's like remarkably good or bad at it. It just seems like he's been through so much shit that like through the natural turmoil of F1, he would have been fired by now.
Yeah.
Somehow he's just like afloat.
Like, the thing with Gunter is I have so much respect and love for Gunter because at the end of the day, like, he is the only team principal on the grid right now that is like genuinely fighting for the race, but also his team's survival. Like, he is doing everything he has to do just to, like,
grinding,
keep the team afloat. Because like Haas literally is just like, I will pay you the bare minimum, and he's like, I will fill in the rest with like volunteering at youth basketball camps, like if I have to. Like, Toto wouldn't dream of taking a picture in front of something if it wasn't for $1 billion. Like, so go Haas. I hope you do well. One thing I want to touch on though that I didn't say during Ferrari, and it goes to the power units. The Haas kind of coming out of nowhere, and the Alpha looked pretty good too. Maybe the Ferrari power unit has something to say this year. Mercedes has kind of been the top dog on the power unit side of things recently. Maybe the Ferrari coming out of nowhere could lend credence in some other areas. All right, so that was kind of a high-level sweep through all of the teams. Let's go on to something lighter, something quicker. 2022 livery rankings. Let's start with your top three.
My top three, my number three, which you alluded to hating before, is actually Merc. And I think it might just be because they've gone back to the Silver Arrow era, which like I always thought was a really sexy look, and the fact that their car is just so sleek. But I actually really like the Merc livery. My number two is McLaren, which also a lot of people have hated. I think it's like more just like a kind of like race car livery that I like more than anything. And then my number one is Aston Martin. I think that the car looks like big and slow, but it looks like a fucking like dragon that you'd see in The Hobbit. So yeah. I think it's a really sleek look. And so
it's actually crazy. I literally watched The Hobbit full series last week, so that's a great reference. My number three is kind of I don't want to call it a boring choice, but my number three is the AlphaTauri. I just love the like the navy and the white. I think it just looks super clean, super good on track. There's nothing crazy about it. I just think it looks super clean and super nice. Last year, I thought they looked great. I think they look great again this year, but they're kind of my boring pick. My number two is the Ferrari. I'm loving this sort of deeper red they've gone with rather than the kind of like bright, boisterous red and then the also kind of random green Mission Winnow they had last year. Throw that shit in the bin, and let's go with a nice, deep, hearty red in the black wing. I think also looks really nice. So they have a wide car, they have a thick car, and I like that it's covered in a very nice paint. And then also my number one is Aston Martin. I think it looks so good. I love the green, and you're totally right. The yellow stripe on it literally is Smaug, man. Like it looks like it's facing forward and coming at you. It's so much better than the pink. Like I really like the lime green compared to the pink. So AlphaTauri, Aston Martin is my number one livery as well. So well defined. Now let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, either the ugliest or the most disappointing, however you feel. Like, who do you want to rag on for their livery choices?
My worst livery is the Red Bull. Because like it obviously is boring and they've just repeated it, but I actually think it looks a lot worse on this car than it did on the one last year. It's something about like the way that like the nose.
It's the nose. It's the nose. It's the way the nose is fully yellow.
Yeah, it's yellow and it's also like drooping this year instead of like straight out like it was last year. And it just looks like weak and bitchy. Like it feels like they have such a big budget, and like Red Bull's known to be like this creative team. Like you'd think they'd come out with something splashy every once in a while, but yeah, I just think it looks like it doesn't look like an aggressive car like it did last year, and the fact that they just rinsed and repeated is like.
I mean, they've been rinsing and repeating for like 20 years. Like, I hate the Red Bull. It looks ugly. The Navy's boring. Like, ugh, get out of my screen. I hate the Red Bull, but it's just like, it's not worth my time to hate because they're never going to change it. And I just want to not look at it and hope that they crash out every race because I hate them. I actually have two disappointing ones. The only reason I'm going to say two is because you put them both in your podium. So I feel the need to strike down. I feel the need to smite these liveries. The Mercedes looks horrendous, like legit awful. Okay, last year, like writing AMG all over the car, like AMJA everywhere, didn't like it. The only thing I hate more than that is those stupid stars all over the back of the car. Like, they're everywhere. It looks ugly. Absolutely terrible. Number two, they put like neon green around the letters or around the numbers on the car. It's a new addition. Looks awful. Just
true.
Like a kid trying to like, it's like people who don't know how to use PowerPoint and they're putting shadows under everything. Stop. It's ugly. And the other thing too, the gray looks slower than the black. Like, the black livery was so clean, so nice. Could you imagine those no side pods, the black livery with that freaking teal swoop? Oh my God, it would have been mint. So that's a disappointing one. Next, McLaren, actually ass ugly. Like, I don't know how you like it. The fact that they did the Golf livery last year and it looked so good. Just do the Golf. Just give the people what they want. But instead, they went with these weird like pastel versions of the color. Like, they took like the punchy orange and the punchy blue and turned them into like teal and burnt orange pastel version. I just hate the like tint they have of the colors. I would love their colors if they were just like the saturated versions of them.
The other thing is that now that Mercedes is off the black, are they done with the BLM movement? Never really know.
I mean, honestly, like, I truly thought like that livery was like the absolute cleanest on the grid. Like, it was, I didn't like the back of the car last year because of, like I said, the AMG all over it, but I was willing to accept it because I thought it looked so sick. Also, under the lights, it looked so good, like premium looking livery. And then they threw it all away for the gray. Like, gray just doesn't look good. Gray sucks. There's nothing worse.
Silver, not gray.
Okay, whatever, man. Silver's even worse. Like, there's nothing worse than just like a gunmetal gray. Ugh. Like, don't even paint it. Just don't even paint it. Just run it out there with the silver. I hate it. Anyways, moving on. Let's go on to our 2022 predictions. So we'll start with our lower awards, and then we'll move up. Actually, no. Let's go with the boring ones, then we'll go to the exciting ones. So, first prediction: who is your 2022 drivers champion, and why?
I'm riding with Max. Fuck it. I think he's there. I think he has the car that it looks like, and I'm riding with him. I think if he wins this year and if they have the car, then he might hold on to it for a few years. And I just think he's an absolute Terminator. So fuck it. I'm riding with Max again. I bet him in the middle of the season last year. He carried me through, and I'm going to stick with him.
All right. Well, I'm going to do the same thing I did last year as well. I'm going to ride with Lewis. This would not have been my answer had what happened last year not happened, but I actually think he is a man possessed. He is a new driver behind the wheel. He's never wanted it more. I truly believe that. I think he wants the 8th one so damn bad to get over Schumacher, and I think he wants one in a different era to say that he's won 3 separate eras of F1. Like, I think if he got it last year, he might have even quit and just been done. But the chance to win again in a new era, I think, means everything to him. I think being sort of like easily defined as the best of all time is something he is going for. And I think he's going to scratch and claw to get it. So I'm going to go with Lewis. I think it's going to come down to the cars. I hate to say like this year is going to look a lot like last year because I know they did a lot of things differently, but I think this is going to come down to Lewis and Max again. And I hope the Mercedes is a bit of a sandbag right now and they're actually pretty level because I want to see this fight go on again. I just want to see Lewis come out on top, and I think he's not going to take no for an answer this year. So I'm going to go with Lewis.
Yeah, I think I don't doubt how much he wants it. I think it's just he's gonna run into the issue of being a slower driver.
Oh, okay. Certainly a ridiculous comment to make. What are your thoughts on the constructors? I'll go first on the constructors. I'm going to go off the board. I alluded to this slightly earlier. Actually, one thing I want to note on the constructors. When we were going through the teams, I feel like I kept saying that, like seventh place teams are going to come seventh again, like blah, blah, blah. While I do think the general structure of the sort of placements is not going to change drastically, I do think that individual races will be more exciting this year. I think any team can kind of have a great race result, can finish in the top 5. So that's one thing. I just wanted to address that because I don't want to run anything. I'm just saying everything's going to be the exact same. Speaking of things not being the exact same, I'm going with Ferrari for my constructors champion. I think that Red Bull and Mercedes are going to be so concerned about I think Perez almost takes Red Bull out of the fight. I think if the Ferraris can both drive and do as well as they have been, I think they will consistently finish above him because they're both better than him. I think in Mercedes, they're going to have a real issue between George and Lewis potentially, and getting that up to speed. If they're not up to speed at the beginning of the year, if they have a down month or anything, I think Ferrari looks consistent. I think they have consistent drivers. I think they have great respect amongst their drivers. And I think they know they probably can't win a driver's championship, and they're going to be all in on constructors. I think they're going to get a ton of thirds, ton of seconds, ton of fourths. They're just going to be the point stackers of the year.
I think that is like the fun pick. Like, I think that's like the thing that you want to happen to switch it up. But I don't know if it really in your mind you think that's going to happen. I think
I genuinely think that Carlos Sainz or Charles Leclerc will finish like third in the drivers. Like, I think the top driver on each of the top 3 teams will finish 1, 2, 3. And if they get the third and fourth place finisher, why can't they win the constructors?
I'm with you there, except I think I would take, like, I'm going to take Mercedes because I would take Lewis over Charles and I would take George over Carlos. And I think that I'd bet that the cars are equal. If Ferrari ends up having a much better car, then I'd be very happy to see them win. But yeah, I just think George Russell's a little less. I think he has a lot more upside, and so I would put him like to come fourth. I'd bet on him to come fourth easily, definitely over Perez, as you said. And then I think Mercedes are just too strong; they'll come back. But like at some point, the reign's got to end, and this is as good of a year as any for them to lose. So I could definitely be wrong there, but yeah, I just think their drivers are too strong that like they'll have somebody in the top 2 like every race.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, do I know it's going to happen? No. Do I think it's going to happen? Maybe not, but I'm like 45% there. Like enough for me to just kind of take a flyer on it because I think
I have them written down as well.
Yeah. All right. The next award, we're going to go with the This Is Nucking Futz award for a crazy bold take that you think is going to happen this year to the point where everyone is like, this is Nucking Futz.
You lead us off on this one.
No problem. Sergio Perez gets replaced by Pierre Gasly during the summer break.
Mid-season.
I think that Perez is going to let them down. I think Ferrari, like I said, will be resurgent and show them that they have 2 drivers that are consistently delivering better results. I think Pierre is going to do exactly what he did last year, just kind of like pull out very solid results, consistently out qualify Perez. And they're just going to say, screw it. Let's go to Pierre. He's familiar with the team. Let's do it quick and dirty. Like the contracts don't even need to be ended or anything because when you sign a Red Bull contract, they sign you for one of their 4 seats. So that's pretty much the only sort of summer transaction they could do. So the contracts work. The drivers, I think, work. And I think they're going to just say, Pierre, come on up. We need your help.
I like it. No, I actually think that's a really good call. And I think like Red Bull was kind of copying the Mercedes formula of like having the top guy and then having a slightly lesser guy, like, and they just kind of rode that through. But now that Mercedes has flipped that on their heads, I think that could definitely happen.
Yeah. I think if Red Bull gets in that sort of like position where, and they've felt this in the past where like Max is racing against both drivers over and over again, and then you mix in the Ferrari guys too, I think they might be like, we need a little upside here, and Checo is not enough.
Right. My bold prediction was going to be that Lando and Daniel have a fist fight in the paddock, but because we've already kind of discussed that, my second prediction is that Haas leapfrogs Alpha Tauri, Alfa Romeo, and Aston Martin and comes sixth. Because
I like that. I like
I just
that.
want to see that white boat just flying through the field, and so I think they got a good shot.
They look better than those teams right now. Like, again, testing is testing. Nobody knows, but like, if Haas can kind of drag itself into relevance again, I think everyone's going to be happy about it. Like, they are the pluckiest of plucky underdogs.
Yeah.
And Magnussen is an underdog. Schumacher's an underdog as a young racer. Like, they are David versus Goliath. I'm into it. I'm just interested to see if they were really just glory laps in testing and they're actually absolute trash again.
I think the combo of the fact that like they just absolutely threw 2021 to the wolves, spent zero money, so they had to be doing something with that time. Like they had to be working on something, and then like on top of that, they got the bonus of like getting rid of Mazepin when they thought they wouldn't. Like should even put them
that is true. That's huge. That's like an extra. That's like an extra 20 points.
Yeah. So
like
those two things that are working in their favor just makes me think like they probably were relatively confident before. Now they should be outperforming what even their own projections were because they got blessed with like getting rid of the worst driver on the grid. So they got to do something.
And like there's so many little things of getting rid of Mazepin. It's just like more consistency. It's also like he crashed the car so many times. All that goes out the window. Like obviously K-Mag's going to crash like this, that, and the other thing. But like all that extra time that the mechanics have to work on cars where you don't get as much data. Like all that stuff goes out the window. They're going to be getting premium data from Kevin Magnussen out there, data collection specialist. I think they're going to have a much better year than last year. Everything's looking up for Haas. And I think if they didn't finish last, everyone's jaw would drop. So moving on next to the Guardians of the Galaxy Award. This one has been named in the sense of, wow, that person was a lot better than I thought they were going to be. Because I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy, everyone thought it'd be shit. It was actually pretty good. So who's your Guardian of the Galaxy?
My Guardian of the Galaxy, we kind of shit on him earlier, so this is tough. But I'm betting big on Ocon this year. I think it's going to be a big year for the tall drivers. George Russell's going to lead the way at the front of the grid, but I honestly think Ocon's going to have a sneaky good year, outpace Fernando, and really like pull Alpine forward and kind of step into his boots in that big contract.
Interesting. Because I was going to actually do the opposite. And I'm going to go with Fernando.
Oh, wow.
I think this, like I said, I meant it that I think this is his last year in F1. I think that Alpine isn't going to give him the best car, but I think he's going to do way better than the Alpine should and that people think he will. I think he's going to show everyone he's much better than Esteban Ocon, which I think he did last year, but Ocon had that win to kind of cover it. I just think everyone's going to be kind of at the end of the year like, Alpine finishes in 8th, but Fernando finished 9th in like the drivers. I think he's just going to consistently be able to pass people. He's also another key thing, I think, is he is someone that has driven in other eras of F1. He has used different cars that have different specs, that have different sort of aerodynamic regimes, etc. So I think a lot of these people have only driven in the turbo hybrid era, only driven under these cars. That it might be a big change for them. And I think if anyone's going to get it quick, it's going to be Fernando. So I think he's going to do a lot better than we think he will, and then ride off into the sunset and say, peace, I'm done with the sport. Alrighty. Last award is going to be the out of left field award for the off-track headline star. You got to go first because I'm honestly still thinking of mine.
I was thinking about this as we were going along, and I think what I'm going to go with is that I think Andreas Seidel has kind of been chilling in the background in terms of, like the drama that exists between team principals. And the fact that maybe Binotto is going to be up there with the top 3, I think there's going to be maybe some more drama in the McLaren garage. And I could see Seidel coming out with some pretty strong words. So I think that Seidel was going to rocket himself towards the top of the pettiness podium, which is our own ranking of who's being the most petty on the F1 grid, and he'll be kind of a breakout star off the track.
That's a crazy pick.
You think
I honestly think that Seidel is oatmeal, man. Like, he's just there to hide behind Zach Brown while Zach Brown gets all the credit.
I don't know, man.
I forget Seidel's name. Like, every time I think of the principals, I forget
That's why he's so under the radar, dude.
I don't even think of him. I literally don't even think of him. Okay. My off the track star is going to be, and it's a tough choice, and I'm not entirely sure. And I'm also stalling because their name just left my mind. Choosing, yes. The new team principal at Aston Martin, Mike Crack. All-time name, all-time job to deal with Lawrence Stroll. But I don't know Mike Crack at all. I have no context for this take, but I think he's going to be in the media a lot because he's at Aston. He's going to be doing some crazy gaslighting. He's going to be blaming the FIA for their lack of success. And he will potentially be Lawrence Stroll to the media because maybe Lawrence is saying, you know what? Everyone hates me. I need a puppet guy. And everyone knew Otmar was a good guy. It would have been weird if Otmar was doing that. So he gets rid of Otmar. He's like, you're not cool enough for me anymore. We're bringing in Mike Crack, a.k.a. the puppet. He's going to be annoying as shit. And he's also going to say that Lance Stroll is a good driver at some point or something like that. Like, he's better than Vettel. He's going to be saying some crazy stuff in the media. And I think people are going to enjoy him. And also, like, it's every time you hear Mike Crack, you just chuckle a little bit because you're immature and a child.
Somebody's got to slip the word lick into an interview somewhere. He'll get in there.
This is why we don't get press passes. You know, we've tried, but they just know that this potential could happen. All right.
I like that.
Okay, that's a lot going into the year. Let's close it out. Bahrain, first race of the year, podium predictions.
I am going to go with George Russell to win, Max Verstappen second, Charles Leclerc third. Because if I do remember correctly, George Russell's driven well on the outer circuit at Bahrain, not the full circuit, but the outer. So he's confident. I think Lewis is going to take a bit of time to get on the pace, and I do truly think that they've been sandbagging. So I'm going with the surprise winner of George Russell coming out of the gates hard and winning in Bahrain.
Nice. All right. I'm going to go Verstappen first because I think the Red Bull looks dominant. I think they're going to show up. Second place, I'll go George. I like that. I do think the Mercedes are sandbagging also. I think they are going to be much better than they look, and I think George's hungry. I think he's going to come out the gate really, really hard. I think he's probably been working super, super hard. Third place, Carlos Sainz. I think every single race this year, I'm going to predict Carlos coming in third. I think he's better than Charles Leclerc. I think he's super consistent, and I think he's just going to kind of pile in results, call him Mr. Bronze, like he's going to be the king of bronzer. He's coming in third every race this year, so that's my pick for Bahrain.
Sneakily, too, George Russell, I was checking out the betting odds before this, and he's below Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz and like Hamilton, Verstappen to win. So I think he's a sneaky good bet.
Yeah, I think he's a sneaky good bet. The only thing is, like, I do think he's the only one that could be impacted by team orders. Like, that's the only thing I'd be worried about George is if Mercedes, the garage is really tilted in Lewis's favor. Because I do think on balance, on talent, he should have the same, if not better odds than.
The fun thing is that, like, there's no way that Lewis doesn't have some agreement where he was like, you can let George in the door, but like,
yeah,
I need this throughout this year. There's no way like Lewis hasn't made that move.
Oh, he's definitely told them for sure.
Yeah, but
we'll see. I do think George is going to shoot out of the gate.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think there might be some carnage at corner one because George is just chucking it up regardless of where he is.
Man, it's going to be exciting. Corner one, first race of the year. When does it start here? Is it like 4 a.m.? When's the time?
I don't know.
What a nightmare. This is legit my least favorite part of F1 is the timing. 11 a.m. That's incredible.
They always blast the East.
Yeah, it's better than normal. Alrighty, well, Eastern Standard Time, 11 o'clock. See you all there. Start of a new era of Formula One. And I'm excited. I know Fish is excited. And we'll be talking to you guys weekly, hopefully, throughout the season. So great start. And at 90 minutes, almost on the dot. Ride?
Ride.
A perfect ride. Cheers, everyone.
Later.